Hey, this is Drew Myers. This is going to be a little different message that comes from you guys today. First thing I want to say is, if you've ever watched any of my videos, I'm so thankful for you guys taking the 10 minutes out to watch them. This one's going to be a little different. First off, I'm going to ask that if you ever shared any of my videos or thought about it, I hope this is the one that you'll share, because I can only reach so many people with this message, and I just feel like God is calling this message to just be thrown out and cast out there for everyone to see. And second, this is going to be a little more explicit than my normal messages. It's got a little bit more sensitive material from my past and things that have just recently come to light. And I just wanted to give you guys a warning about that before you watch this video. Thank you. So if you know any part of my story, I am adopted. I've been able to contact my mom, and she's just the best thing ever. I love being able to text her whenever I want to, and our relationship is really good. But I was pursuing a relationship with my birth father, and everything was kind of going wrong. Like, they couldn't find him. They couldn't get any responses from these supposed things. And so I decided to reach out to my birth mother and say, hey, I know that you're not together with my birth father anymore, and I understand that. And I asked, do you have any reason why my birth father wouldn't want to get to know me or want to respond? And it's kind of like a 5-minute pause in our text. And I kind of thought, I assumed that I knew what the worst was in saying that, oh, he's dead and I'm never going to have a relationship with him. I got a text probably about a paragraph long that said, I didn't know how to tell you this. I was going to not tell you this at all, but it seems like I need to tell you now that I was raped by your birth father. And I want to take a pause right there, but when I knew my birth father and birth mother were probably not together, but I thought I'd be able to have a relationship with both of them, and just, they would have been looking for me, trying to pursue me, and they'd want a relationship. But if I could just, what it felt like to me is, it's a really weird analogy, but that the castle at Disneyland, like how white and beautiful it is, like that was my vision of my birth mom and dad. It was just beautiful and just like so precious. But in that moment that I got that text, it's as if the castle wasn't white anymore. It had been overgrown with thorns, not taken care of very well, a lot of broken pieces. And just in that moment, I've never felt so broken in my life. And I couldn't text back. I didn't know what to say. How do you respond to somebody that you know? I mean, obviously they're supposed to look out for you. A father is supposed to be protective of their children. I didn't know what to say, because I could only imagine the hurt she was feeling by having to live through it again. And then I started thinking, do I look like him? I couldn't look in the mirror. I was lost. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to lay in bed all day, and that's what I did for about a week. I finally texted her back and said, I'm sorry. She responded with, what do you have to be sorry about? That happened to you. I never dreamed, when you're prepared to meet your parents, they always they ask all these prep questions, and then they take you to the office and they're like, you know, your parents, they could be dead. So be prepared for that. The question, they never ask the question, your father could have raped your mother. Are you prepared for that? And I mean, it's an odd question. Rape is kind of pushed around. It's kind of almost joked over till it happens to be part of your story. Then it's not so funny anymore. And I was just broken. And I just did not know what to do, and I kind of stopped talking to God for a little while. I couldn't really talk to anybody for about a week. And then Sunday came around and I was like, you know what, I just need to go talk to one of the pastors. And it took me about 15 minutes to get out of the car and into the church, just with this guilt and shame that was hanging on over me. Like, if people really knew what I was, would they even talk to me anymore? They wouldn't think of me as Drew anymore. I'd just be turned into this monster thing. And that wasn't really the case at all, but I started believing what Satan was telling me. And I got in there and I got prayed over, and I kind of started talking to God about it and kind of seeing, well, God, why? Instead of like why this was happening, I kind of asked God, how can I use this to help others? And I can relate somewhat to the shame and guilt felt by the person who's raped, because you've done nothing wrong. Like, you had something that's supposed to be this like special act between a husband and a wife taken from you. And then it kind of turns into this downward spiral from something that was taken from you to, you know what? The world says, it's okay to abort this child, because what kind of life is that child going to have? And I kind of want to take a second and just kind of give a voice to the voiceless here and speak from being the product of rape. For those of you who don't know, I have a lovely wife. I have 2 lovely children. I like to think I'm a good putting member into the church that I belong to. Life isn't what I expected it, but I've lived a pretty successful life in my books. And so when Satan comes to you and says, you know what, you've been raped, it's okay to abort this child, it's what kind of life is that kid gonna have? And so it turns in from this, like, you're already feeling this guilt and this shame that it doesn't even belong to you. Like, you didn't have the choice. And it's just this guilt and shame, and it turns into this bigger monster on your back, and the mistake is made that you abort the child. And before we go any further, I'd like to read a Bible verse to you. It's Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet of the nations. And to me, that's saying, even though this evil act was committed, and this hurt, and this pain, and this guilt, and the shame is there, God is there in the mess. Like, in every mess, there's a message. And he's look at me, like I am the product of the evil act, and I'm doing everything in my power to use that as a weapon against Satan, who came against my birth mom and tried to tell her that, you know what, I got you. I already see the shame, the guilt, the pain that you're having. Why don't you go ahead and just abort this child? He's not going to do anything. And I have had a successful life. I'm doing everything I can for my family. I I'm just living on fire for God. And so, you know, I am the product of this evil thing. So don't let Satan come in and tell you that the rape is, you know, once that happens, you know, it's all downhill. Because it's not. Rape is a terrible thing, and it's one of, like, the way I look at it and the way I've been talking to God about it is, I see that these things that God has put this such a beautiful thing in it. It's childbirth. That's a beautiful thing, and that the devil can corrupt and take away. Marriage is a beautiful thing that the devil can corrupt and take away. Having sex with your husband or your wife, that's a beautiful thing that rape can come in and just destroy and wreak havoc and just cause you to feel so worthless and so full of shame. And like I said, I can't even begin to understand what that feels like. But God allowed me to feel a portion of that so that I could give this message. The shame and the guilt that I felt for doing nothing wrong, that in itself is wrong, because that God put that on the cross when he sent Jesus down here. And that's just so wrong for you to feel like that when you've done nothing wrong. And I just want to say that, look, I can't begin to understand the pain of being raped because I've never been there. All I can speak from is the side of being the product of rape and how that's kind of affected me, and hope to help somebody else who's dealing with that shame and guilt that I've only felt a tenth of. And I also just want to, just anybody else who's, like, you didn't have to be raped, but just any shame or guilt that you've ever felt for anything that you've done wrong in your life, or, you know, wasn't even by your choice, that, you know, maybe your parents divorced and you're feeling guilt and shame from that, and it really had nothing to do with you. It was just Satan coming in to break up something beautiful God had prepared for us. And I can just say that the guilt and the shame, it's not normal. You shouldn't ever feel guilt and shame. And in closing, I kind of want to just encourage you to just, if you're dealing with guilt or shame, just to reach out to somebody. And I know a lot of people will, you know, they're rape victims will, you know, they'll have that lie in their head that they can't go to a church and talk to somebody about it, because as soon as they walk in there, they'll be judged. And that's not the case at all. When I went to see one of our pastors, and I told him what had happened and what I'm feeling like and how worthless I felt, and would God even still want to use me, he just instantly wanted to pray over me and told me that those lies I can't believe. And so, regardless of what you are or what you've gone through, God has never left your side, and he's not going anywhere. And don't believe what the devil is telling you. And if you want to reach out and talk to me, I'd more than love to hear your story or what's going on. And I try to be as transparent as possible for who I am and what I'm about. And no one should ever have to feel with that guilt and that shame, that just blanket that covers you.